I'm so delighted to now introduce the next pillar, which is Sarah Jenkins. Sometimes I think when I talk about the Menzies Foundation, it sounds like we're a large organisation with many, many people. And that's really actually because most of the way we do our work devolves to our collaboration partners and our support for them. But the Menzies Foundation is a very small organisation. There's myself and Sarah Jenkins, who I'm about to introduce you to, and a new recent appointee who helps us with a bit of the back-end work. Sarah Jenkins has brought an extraordinary lens to the work of the foundation and has made me realise just how underrated and how little understood the narrative is in terms of the way that we think about who we are and what we want to do. In that collective impact slide that we had before, strategic communication is the fifth pillar. And yet so often in this work, in our work, the fifth pillar, think about that for a minute, is a comms news item at the end of a project, or a series of outreach about what's happening on the ground, it's what's happening, or the odd report that drops. But actually, if you think about the pillars that we've talked about to date, if you think about incubation, if you think about collaboration, if you think about clarifying strategy, if you think about all the things we've talked today, the one thing that absolutely lies at the heart of all of those efforts is does everybody understand or believe the narrative? Does everybody connect to the narrative? How does the narrative build coalescence? How does it support collaboration? How does it ensure we develop a common language? How does it insist that we codify our learnings? The narrative is key, and it gives me great delight because Sarah Jenkins is one of these extraordinary people who seems to be able to do about 15 different comms function in one place, but has made a profound difference to how we think about communicating our agenda at the foundation. And Sarah sits in many of our collaborations as part of the collaboration team, bringing that very specific lens. She is a pillar in the work that we do. It gives me great delight to introduce Sarah Jenkins.
Wow, what an intro, thank you. And it's so lovely to be with everyone today, and especially to speak about something that's so important, and especially one of my passions anyway. As Liz indicated earlier, the foundation operates from a collective impact model. It's imperative to align our vision and mission to this, and equally so as we look at communications, strategic communications. So what is it? It's often something that people don't always know how to articulate. We know it's an important function. We know it's imperative in terms of the collective impact model, but what actually is it? And so I'll run through that today. It's the narrative of the strategic aspirations of the initiative. It pulls people together to focus on the North Star. It clarifies what everybody's aiming for. It creates a shared language for those working on the initiative. It cultivates a deep sense of vision and mission. It builds the audience for the initiative. It communicates and connects to the system. And it is the mechanism by which you codify and share insights from the work. And so my question, given these points, which seem pretty important, why is it the pillar and the function often under-resourced, overlooked, or quite misunderstood? And so we believe at the foundation and beyond that it's the fundamental in how we share the learnings and the insights from what's happening in the work and how to codify those ways, plus be able to communicate those things such that the system can take advantage of what is actually being learned. From my perspective and the perspective of the model, strategic communication sits from conception, from exploration, ideas stage, right through to system change. It's a deep understanding of the why, the what, the who, the how, and the where. And so when we understand that these things are so necessary and that the function sits across the whole thing, we understand it's not an afterthought, it's not a comms piece or a report, it's something much deeper and more important than that. Why is narrative the key to impact? Storytelling, comms, these sorts of words. Narrative, let's focus on that. Storytelling is one of the most valuable resources in the development of an initiative. A powerful narrative educates and inspires people. The narrative aligns partners and stakeholders and advocates in the system. It's the whole attitude of how you see how strategic communication works alongside the systemic work. Building an audience, engaging with stakeholders, sharing the insights, working out how to connect into the system. And all of that is informed by narrative. How you brand it, the language you use, the tools you use, the different audiences you might have, and how you actually present to those different audiences. And so, effective narrative strategy would have to be number one. Communication must be strategic, and that is having that full understanding of what the who, why, the who, why, what, where, and how. Social impact organisations often dive into storytelling without articulating clear goals, without understanding their interests, motivations of the target audience, or setting measurable objectives. These strategic guidelines are necessary to craft effective content and design an engagement plan using the appropriate platforms to reach the right people and mobilise them for a cause. Capacity. We know comms takes skill, and so do we respect the need for resourcing? We know it's not an afterthought, we know it's imperative, and so do we have the resource to actually provide the function? We know that storytelling professionals can turn a story, they have the skill to turn the story into something really compelling. And we know that that is how we cut through. Content. It must be meaningful. This is the design, thinking and concept space that actually takes the energy and effort when you're putting it together. It's such a hyper-competitive environment out there. And people notice and share only the most compelling content. Compelling and motivating stories create emotional resonance and human connection while serving a strategic purpose, such as driving people to take meaningful action. Stories for social impact must show people as active agents for change, who play a central role in creating solutions to the problems that they face. This preserves dignity, encourages empathy, and inspires people. Technology, gosh, there's a lot out there. And which platform do you go with? What suits your organisation? There is no one size fits all, and so having the understanding of what's actually out there is really, really important. And evaluation. Organisations that evaluate the impact of their storytelling accurately can learn what's working and enhance their success. Knowing your touch points, knowing how to create something that you plan on having it be meaningful and connect, but also being able to pivot and understand where we can improve, what we can change, and these evaluation and the measuring is so important moving forward. Mistakes happen, failures happen, and you just keep going, but understanding, having a deep understanding of what that looks like is really important. As Liz spoke to earlier, the Foundation's mission is to contribute to a leadership movement. We ask Australians to reflect on leadership, pivot to purpose, build their leadership capability and contribute to the greater good. To deepen our impact, the Foundation is in the process of developing an overarching framework which allows us to monitor the impact of our endeavours across the breadth of the Foundation's work. We are interested in understanding how each of the Foundation's initiatives contribute to the greater good leadership movement. And I'd like to speak very briefly about the second component of that model, and that's virality. Now, virality, by definition, is the likelihood of something being shared and spread widely among different users, readers, and individuals online or in person. The viral coefficient measures the number of new users an existing user generates. So we understand that. And so what I'd like to ask is, how do you think about the development of the narrative, the delivery of the messaging, and the effectiveness of the way you track to indicate how you are amplifying that message and ultimately making impact? I think that's a really good reflection for everyone. And so if I can leave you with this, and this is just a checklist that I've put together around virality and how we can make impact. Appeal, it's all about the audience. Ensuring you have that niche appeal, ensuring it resonates. Visually dynamic, and dynamic in general. I mean, we're beyond photos, we're into videos, we're into all sorts of different ways and tools to be able to make these things pop out. People, we struggle with, because it's so hyper-competitive, I think we've got about 0.18 of a second to literally capture someone's mind before they're off to the next thing. And so you have to start strong. So visually dynamic is so important. Be creative, be original. People out there want something different from anything they've seen before. And if it isn't, they won't share. They won't connect with it. It's connection, striking an emotional chord, and this goes back to relatability. They need to connect with the content in a way that it makes them want to start a conversation. Shareable. The content has to make you want to share it and be able to share it. So consider using the right platform and no barriers around that. And last of all, timing. It's all about the timing. It's published at the right moment. It's either timely because it's something people are discussing, or it's at the right moment for you to capture lots of viewers. So if you want something to go viral on a Saturday evening, gosh, it better be impressive. And so that's something to think about. And so on that note, I'll hand back to Liz.
Thanks, Sarah.
Pleasure.
Let me just say that's Sarah's first presentation at a conference, and I think she did an absolutely magnificent job. So can we give her another big clap, please? The point I want to make is that, the Menzies Foundation aspires to create this leadership movement. We want people to pivot to purpose and contribute to the greater good. Every piece of communication that we do is oriented to that grander aspiration. Every question we ask, every graphic we use, at whatever point you connect with our work, asks you to think about who you are, what you are in the world, and what you can contribute. And that theme is how we deliver on that mandate I've given the board, that I'll build or contribute to a leadership movement for the greater good. None of that would be possible without Sarah Jenkins and how she thinks about strategic communication. What Sarah Jenkins produces is the link between all those ducks pedalling at 100 miles an hour and actually how we build our leadership movement. And there's not a person sitting in this room that doesn't have a narrative that they're trying to tell or a story they're trying to tell. So once again, I ask you, when you think about evaluating for impact, how integral is comms to what you're doing? And secondly, and most importantly, to Sarah's point, how focused are you on what's outside your organisation, who your audience is, how they want to engage with the material? And then fundamentally of all, because we're happy with those in the room today to share the power of, we think, the potential of the viral coefficient, are you making material that others want to share too because it has a point of view, because it tells something, because it contributes in some way? Because the virility lies at the heart of any movement any of us are trying to build.